Lindridge. You will notice the poor man has got his arm in bandages, and I'm very, very grateful to him for actually coming to give this talk, because he has broken his wrist and his hand. So thank you very much, David. You're very brave. You're a hero. Okay. David himself is actually from the fire brigade, but today he will be talking on behalf of the National Policing Improvement Agency. He was seconded at the end of 2008 into the NPIA, and there he represents the interests of the Fire and Rescue Service in a program to improve interoperability between the services and agencies involved with incident resolution. Now, there's a little bit more. I think I'd like to just read the next sentence, because I think it puts the program that he's involved with into context. It says that the program delivered the first multi-agency doctrine which defines the principles of interoperability and the processes to be considered in the creation of national standard operating procedures, supporting multi-agency working from normal daily business to a national response. So thank you very much, David.
Thank you. All right. Good morning, Just. David Lindridge, National Police Improvement Agency, as Eve just said. I'll make an apology now. I've scripted my presentation as it's on the record, but hopefully anything else will come out in the questions if there's anything that I haven't gone into deep enough detail. Okay, so recent events, both here in the UK and worldwide, have demonstrated emergencies and crises are often characterised by uncertainty. Providing commanders on the ground quickly with an accurate picture and an assessment of the totality of a situation will help them manage that uncertainty and reduce risk, and thus increase the effectiveness of their decision making. For those decisions to be correct, commanders demand accurate, timely and consistent information, which must be as complete as the circumstances permit. Equally critical is providing the public with timely information so they too can decide how to stay safe. For example, when an announcement is made that the terrorist threat level has been raised, what action do we expect the public to take when, without greater explanation, we just ask them to remain vigilant? Communications interoperability provides capabilities by which we can extract decision-critical information from wherever it is held and make it available to inform fully the decisions of those entrusted with command. My presentation will focus on the key points that support the improvement of our preparedness for emergencies, which will achieve our objective of unifying communications for a safer response. Today I'm going to be covering implementing the learning that demonstrated why we need to improve communications interoperability and when it's needed. Also, implementation of Airwave as a common radio platform for interoperable voice communications, and how this all fits in the roadmap to success that we call the UK Interoperability Continuum. Finally, I would like to touch on the development of a common operating picture as a tool to support collaborative command decision making. So my objective for this session is to highlight the importance of a unified approach to implement multi-agency collaboration across the UK resilience community. But first, it's helpful to have a definition. So this is what we mean in the multi-agency interoperability programme by interoperability. The capability to exchange operational and relevant information is absolutely vital to our joint capabilities to respond effectively to crises. Information vital to collaborative decision-making should not remain locked in just one organisation. To do this, we need common practices and standards that allow development of procedures which are as relevant to day-to-day emergencies as they are to high-impact events. That way, we ensure the processes, systems and technologies we use for interoperability are familiar regardless of the scale of the incident. In so doing, we build the confidence of incident commanders in new command support technologies, allowing them to reach for them instinctively. This means they utilise the same devices and applications for crises as they do for their day-to-day operations. During a crisis, when individuals are under most pressure to act, is not the time to introduce new equipment and unfamiliar ways of working. We're not seeking to change the accepted command principles and protocols in each of our emergency services. We are, however, changing the means by which they use the communications technologies to enhance interagency coordination. But why should we be changing at all our tried and tested modes of operation? The answer is that organisational learning from the UK and overseas has identified ever-present gaps in capabilities amongst the emergency services to communicate and thus respond as effectively as the public expects. These lessons reinforce the importance of a consistent all-hazards approach that doesn't differentiate between man-made or natural disaster, where communications interoperability is one of the critical success factors to an effective response. In the UK, with the rollout of Airwave as a common radio network for around 1,000 organisations, we have the opportunity to achieve something close to a public communications utopia. That includes reaching the ideal where the UK resilience community has the capability to communicate wherever, whenever, and with whoever they need to, where the operational benefit exists. The challenge is not the technology, it's the cultural change required to utilise radio communications and allow those users to maximise the benefits of the enabling technologies we've already invested in. So when should they make use of these technologies? It's exactly the same as the circumstances they already talk face-to-face, whenever it adds operational value. The only difference is that we now have the technology available to do this remotely when face-to-face just isn't practical. In an operational context, that means that when the scale, complexity and geography of a challenge, they challenge the ability of the operational commanders to meet in one spot to talk, such as in a flood situation over a wide area, the technology they're already carrying can make that possible, make the exchange of information possible. I reiterate, this isn't about replacing the current methods of communication, but supplementing them and supporting them through the technology which is already part of the kit we carry. Which brings me on to Airwave. Airwave is used as a resilient digital radio communications system for in-service communications with over 400 sharer organisations already signed up. It is, however, more than just a communication tool for talking within your own organisation. Airwave can facilitate multi-agency interoperability through many talk groups and other functionality that were never available on previous radio systems. However, many of these functions remain unused. Janet Napolitano, the Secretary of State for US Department of Homeland Security, summed this up in one statement. Better technology can expand our capabilities and free our agents to spend their time where it's most valuable. That means keeping commanders informed remotely, giving them timely, accurate and consistent information so they can remain alongside their teams where leadership is most valuable. In this picture, from the failed terrorist attacks in July 2005, personnel from all agencies met face-to-face, meeting in order to exchange information and so to have a common operating picture. It raises some interesting questions. Is this style of information exchange effective? Is everyone in the huddle getting the same information and leaving with the same understanding? Do their teams have sufficient leadership available during the meeting to deal with any unexpected changes in their environment? How long will the exchange of information remain relevant, and how accurate is that information going to be as soon as they leave that huddle? The other question is, when will they next have an opportunity to meet like that again? We need to be smart, though, about how we use these technologies. By way of an example, in April last year, at the G20 protests in London, the protesters mobilised themselves with technology that they bought from local shops. In contrast, airwave radio is based on requirements developed in the 1990s, and so it's more than 10 years old. It's not due for replacement until 2020. Airwave Solutions Limited continue to upgrade and enhance the applications, but it remains a bespoke technology. More data applications are being made available, and Airwave is absolutely the right solution for today's voice communications. However, voice interoperability for Tell Me is only one part of the requirement. Modern methods of communication rely predominantly on Show Me. We only need to look at teenagers today mobilising their operational plan for a Saturday night out, and they won't need to talk to each other once. They will use all the little applications that come on their iPhones, and they will all manage to meet up in the same place at the same time with the same amount of money in their pocket. Additional functionality of devices we give our staff, such as web browsers and cameras, are frequently disabled to limit the potential security liability of that device, and also to stop them using them for non-work related matters. We need to embrace these new communications conventions, and in doing so deliver a common operating picture to support both single service communications and, in a crisis, multi-agency interoperability. To demonstrate the importance of this in an operational context, we often talk about the golden hour, as decisions taken in those first 60 minutes provide the foundation of the response that follows. In a typical incident, during the often chaotic initial phase, an accurate collective understanding of the situation by all responder agencies, especially their incident commanders, is absolutely pivotal to the effectiveness of their decision-making, plus the safety of all. Use of compatible, if not common technologies, as decision support tools is therefore critical to support commanders with the collection and collation of information to enhance their situational awareness. From the moment of the first notification by 999, information is received in a control centre. It's being collated, and it should be collated to support the information, to support the response on the ground. If we reflect on the events of 7th of July 2005 in London, for example, it has been documented that it took 63 minutes from the first 999 call before the emergency services fully and collectively understood the scale of the London terrorist attacks. That isn't something I had personal experience of, but having spoken to a number of Silver commanders at that event, they can believe that figure is accurate. Turning to the terrorist attacks in Mumbai in November 2008, it took the authorities more than 24 hours before they gained a realistic sense of the scale and complexity of the situation they faced. Thus, I trust you can see why we're passionate about developing and implementing new processes and systems enabled by appropriate technologies that will provide decision makers across the UK resilience community quickly what is we frequently call the common operating picture. The publications of the Multi-Agency Interoperability Programme have introduced the UK Interoperability Continuum, which has been developed to meet the specific needs of the UK resilience community. It offers a common roadmap for change to progress from the minimum, which is explained up this side, minimum undesired level, towards the optimal level at the other end of the diagram, which is the optimal level where we aim to get to. Now, I don't expect you to read this today, but rather highlight the 5 interdependent work streams there. The technology work stream directs us to optimise both our voice and data capabilities, which develop to meet our evolving requirements. This demonstrates the point that whilst we in Britain sit in a very privileged position with a common airwave network, which has been in place since around 2000, it has been available to all agencies since 2006 through a £1 million interim solution. The use for interoperability has been minimal, if not nil. It clearly demonstrates that provision of technology on its own is not a solution. The 4 other streams are essential for the benefits of interoperability to be realised. We need unified governance to achieve agreement to pursue interoperable goals and practices. This leadership is essential for driving forward a consistent change across multiple organisations. This will need to be formalised to ensure consistent progress across multiple agencies. Managing projects where you control your resources is hard enough. Managing a programme where you don't have control of the organisation that you're trying to make a change in is almost impossible. Almost. Standard operating procedures are the products which describe the business rules that our personnel work to and drive the cultural change they will have to work through. These are critical to deliver the consistency and ensure that we can interoperate without compromising the safety of our personnel. As much as promoting use, SOPs can set the discipline required for the effective and efficient application of interoperable tools, preventing uncontrolled use. Our team has produced a guide to prompt organisations to make local changes, enabling interoperable protocols which should be reflected in their own local SOPs. Training and exercising is absolutely critical to build confidence and competence, as well as embedding the cultural change in a safe environment. Familiarity with the protocols will build the confidence of the end users and will increase the end users' awareness and capability that they can benefit from. If the end users are unfamiliar with the product or unclear of the benefits which can be gained, it is unlikely they will turn to it when under pressure.
So can you just explain
who the end users are in this context?
Well, it depends on what the product is they're trying to use. So in the case of Airwave, it would be anyone with an Airwave terminal on their chest. If they don't understand that they can turn to a different talk group, or that's a radio channel if you like, if they don't understand that they can actually change it to work in a different way, they're not going to do it when they actually would get the most benefit out of it. Similarly, if they're going to be the sort of person who would go and buy a nice new iPhone, they may want to look at what other functionality they can achieve on it. I was in Merseyside when a fire officer came over to me and asked why the NPIA had changed the fleet map in their radio, because it meant he couldn't speak to his police officer wife. So people are already experimenting with the equipment that they're given. If we don't have the business rules in place to manage that, it will become uncontrolled, and that is where we will lose the integrity of command. In Mr. Pooley's diagram on the previous previous presentation, you showed a hierarchical map of what was how they organised the ambulance service during 7/7. If people were able to start shortcutting those links, information isn't going to take the proper flow through the organisation, and thus areas are going to be without an understanding of what's going on. Ultimately, usage is where the public will experience the improvements delivered by the investment into Airwave. This will be demonstrated in scalable procedures which meet the escalating demands of local emergencies through to major incidents, wherever and whenever 2 or more responder agencies need to coordinate their response. The first version of this roadmap was delivered in 2007, the UK version that is, and agreed by the Chief Officers and Chief Executives Association back in 2009. This latest version has been available since February this year, and this is the golden thread that runs through all our work in the multi-agency team. Finally, this diagram is designed to help visualise the capability requirements of the common operating picture. The 6 generic information sets represent a wide range of details which already exist or are currently gathered for the resolution of an incident. This information exists in many locations in different formats with contributions from many different open and closed sources, including public and first responders at the incident. Making it available across artificial boundaries it exists in will assist in the development of the common operating picture. Human intervention for intelligent analysis is required to fuse this information into timely, simple messages relevant to the particular operational decision maker. Reports back from the scene to share updates and plans will contribute to the value of that common operating picture and maintain its currency. Equally critical is to ensure that credible messages are, with sufficient detail are also shared with the public and to inform and warn them. Suppliers and responders are attempting to develop the common operating picture already, but this concept should not be a product purchased from a single supplier. It should be technology agnostic, allowing it to be not only disseminated over the most appropriate networks to commanders using whatever voice and data technologies are available to them, but also allow them to contribute to it as well. This allows all responder agencies to contribute, increasing the value of the common operating picture. The National Resilience Extranet, developed by the Civil Contingencies Secretariat for the UK resilience community, was fully launched in May this year and provides a vehicle for collating and sharing information. The interoperability programme believes we should start making full use of the NRE as a common tool to join up the exchange of electronic information to support our decision makers. This could allow the greater exploitation of devices we've all invested in to mobilise our information. We must seek to break down these barriers that we put around our information and share, where possible, to harmonise the valuable work of everyone within the UK resilience community and afford them the safety the public would expect them to have. So to close, hopefully I've demonstrated why and when we need to embrace communications interoperability as the vital link to improving operational preparedness. Even in these financially difficult times, there is more we can achieve from the investment that has already been made into the technology we carry daily. Hopefully I've also demonstrated how this all fits together within the comprehensive programme plan mapped out on the continuum. And finally, I believe, I've explained how we believe incorporating the common operating picture will be vital to improving the situational awareness and more collaborative decision making. Ultimately, we're working towards our objective of unifying communications for a safer response. And I hope that has given you an insight into the work we're doing within the multi-agency team.
Great, thank you very much, David. Right, do I have any? Yes, there is in fact another mic. Where is Siddharth? No? I'll give you mine then.
No questions? I'll just...
Thank you.
So move around here then.
Yes, very much. Please say who you are.
I'm George Mihalac. I'm a consultant and project manager.
So we can speak up a little bit, please.
Yeah, sure. The question, David, is what steps are made or proposed at building regulation level towards the incorporation of the required systems that enables you to integrate and have this interoperability? Thank you.
I'm afraid I can't comment on building regulations. Not something I'm familiar with. But as far as the common operating picture goes, if this doesn't answer your question, please jump in. But as far as the common operating picture goes, fire services quite often collect building plans and building regulation information that they hold for their own safety, for the safety of their personnel who may have to operate in those areas when, let's say, the security of the building is not in the same state as it was when the plans were made. We hold on to those details, and we have been criticised in the past for keeping those details in a drawer back at the fire station, where actually the place that they'd be most used would be at the incident ground. Now, we've gone through a major piece of work right across the country to mobilise that information to those first responders on fire engines, so that they have the information visually and hard copies in the cab of the vehicle there. Can we really justify not sharing that information as quickly and as effectively as possible with the other emergency services when we know there's a risk available? And so, yes, we are mobilising that information, and we are making it available to the responders where that risk is most being felt.
Thanks. Vinay Gupta, Hex Europe Project. So the sort of gradient in capability between the common off-the-shelf hardware and the institutional hardware kind of continues to grow. What's the sort of long-term strategy for dealing with that gap? And what do you think that looks like in, say, 20 years?
Right. There is a future communications programme that is going ahead, looking at what communications we will use after airwave. But that said, there are also many local projects going ahead which are making best use of available technologies in small local areas of I don't like to call them silos, but you get small areas where they're making use of technologies that are available to them. Now, that may mean that they're using BlackBerries to mobilise information to police officers on the ground. Indeed, there's the NPIA is dealing with the Mobile Information Programme, which saw £80 million worth of investment go towards BlackBerries. How we can mobilise that information further, we're currently running a small proof of concept to see how we can mobilise that information not just to police officers, but now start sharing across between police, fire and ambulance. That's running in Merseyside at the moment, and maybe running in Thames Valley Police later on in the year, and possibly in Yorkshire as well. But we're looking at how we can mobilise that information using the National Resilience Extranet as the common tool available to each of us, and looking to bridge the gap between BlackBerry technology, a Windows-based tablet, and the bespoke MDTs that are sitting in the front of other vehicles. So yes, we are looking to incorporate. We're looking at a more standards-based approach rather than a technology-based approach.
So it's basically kind of a backhaul-centric approach where you sort of institutionalise the knowledge base and then chain devices off it with different levels of security and reliability depending on the job needed. That kind of an approach?
Right, you're going into more detail than I would be allowed to not to discuss, than I would have the competency to actually answer your question on. But the reality of it is that we identify that there are, depending on the size of an organisation, the different budgets, the different perceived risks, people have got different amounts of time and effort and finance to push towards a solution. What we see is the NRE as an affordable means for all people to contribute towards a common operating picture. Not only that, is also the ability to generate your information in your own bespoke systems and then still push your information over the National Resilience Extranet. Okay, and so that's we're pushing towards that sort of mentality, not necessarily saying that your front end should be the National Resilience Extranet, but you should use that as the common portal.
I've got two questions. One at the back, and who's already got the mic, and one at the front.
Hi David, Steve Arundel from London Borough Redbridge. In Redbridge we remotely monitor our river which frequently floods via our IP webcam, which we can remotely share with other agencies through a password, and it's a useful tool. We recently made it available to the public, and we had about 111 phone calls from members of the public informing us that we needed to actually cut the reeds in the river because it was
Sorry, what was happening?
cut the reeds in the river because it was affecting the capacity of the river, and they were more likely to flood in their own home. I would be interested, however, in your thoughts on the use of video in the shared information picture, and how you feel that possibly the National Extranet could assist in sharing video, or how you see Airwave evolving into video.
Okay, right. As far as we stand at the moment, Airwave and video, I have no awareness that we'll be seeking to mobilise any video over Airwave. As I understand it, there are some examples of still imagery being pushed over Airwave to terminals in some parts of the country for police officers. As far as video use goes, certainly the project I was involved in, London Fire Brigade, before I came onto the MPIA programme, we very much see the benefits of sharing video information, particularly the command units which we rolled out into London Fire back in 2007. Each have the capacity to receive the microwave downlink from the helicopter, the police helicopter, which is an incredibly valuable tool, particularly when you consider the thermal imagery capacities they have, and the large areas of London we frequently shut down due to cylinders being exposed to heat. Now, whilst people are looking at the benefits of being able to mobilise video, we have to be mindful of the capacity of the devices that are trying to access that information. If you have someone who's sitting with an incredibly large broadband link connected to a Virgin Media box, whatever, they may well be able to put a few gigabytes of imagery straight up onto the NRE. It would also mean that the person at the other end who may be on a 2G BlackBerry may not be able to access that because of the restrictions that are put in place. So again, that comes down to putting the business rules in around how we interoperate, and not necessarily just coming up with a single bespoke solution to suit connection between fire and police, for example. I don't know if you're aware, but Rob Wally, who used to be Brent Council, just joined our team, and he's very much pushing that we are considering the wider responder community and not just concentrating on police, fire and ambulance, and that's certainly an interest in all of us.
I'm Sue Whitton, Emergency Planning Officer for Lincolnshire County Council. Talking about your common operating picture and all the aspects around that you'd need to have available to you, the various forms and sources, have you heard of the software called AIMS?
Yes, it's actually embedded into part of the NRE.
Oh, that's all right then.
Right. Well, see, now, this is my own opinion. This isn't, what I'm about to say is not the opinion of the National Policing Improvement Agency. It is David Lindridge on his own. Right, if you look at AIMS and Atlas AIMS, Atlas Ops, it is not all things to all people, and you've got to consider the different budgets and the different progress different organisations have already made. Certainly, I'm going to go back to my work with London Fire Brigade, where a bespoke platform has been made with Vector Command, which is now available and does suit the way fire services operate. It's now available nationally, internationally actually. It's been taken up in some parts of Australia, I believe. Now, that product is all well and good, and it does, for fire services, it does more than Atlas AIMS, Atlas Ops would do for them, in my opinion. You're not going to convince London Fire Brigade to change or to break out of a contract that they're in with Vector Command so that they can supply information onto Atlas AIMS, Atlas Ops because it's on the NRE. However, what we could do is look at how Vector Command could possibly populate information on Atlas AIMS, Atlas Ops in the NRE, so that it's available to other responders who can only afford a smaller budget towards a command and control product, and may be able to extract it through that product, which ultimately is available on the NRE.
I mean, we've got an Atlas Ames licence in our command and control centre. It's a multi-agency centre, and the chap's comment at the back about building control regulations and that sort of thing, we've actually had a £1,000 upgrade of our command centre, so that we've got free wireless access for multi-agency partners, so they can bring their equipment in. It's got lots of broadband connectivity, mobile phone connectivity. Bearing in mind it's an old World War II bunker. You've got to get through the walls and this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, there has been a lot more development now around this common operating picture and multi-agency interoperability and things like that. So.
Excellent. I'd like to say that people talk about developing this new idea. This new idea of the common operating picture, and the diagram is something that we've put together ourselves in the program that we're working on. My personal opinion is the common operating picture already exists. We already do it. We gather together in those huddles and we develop a common operating picture. It's about how we develop that common operating picture, maintain it and put the best information into it. After all, when we sit down, we don't all still listen to the radio. We sit down in front of a television each evening now to see the evening news. That is an easy way for gathering information, gleaning information. It's about giving people information in the way that they can absorb it quickly and act on it. If that means getting a quick update over radio, so be it. If it's visualising a map, we need to be able to visualise that map. And if we're printing that map off onto a piece of paper, that is only current at the point it's printed. If that map is then taken away, people are working on it for a few hours, line drawings will go over it. When the next map is printed off, do we actually make sure the previous map was destroyed? That previous map is still floating around out there with the latest information. So we have people potentially operating on different information. Yeah.
A very quick point. Sorry, Maggie Ellis. The whole thing about user knowledge and ability, I think, is often very underestimated. When I was a very small child, I lived by the sea. And 2 years running, we were flooded very seriously by the sea, 6 feet deep. The first year as a young child, I was terrified. The next year, I knew what to expect. And even as a young child, I could contribute to what happened in the house where I lived and the animals we kept and all that kind of thing. So I think it's very easy to ignore that kind of knowledge, and people will care for themselves because they have to.
Indeed. When we consider now what happens with information that comes from the public, where does it go? It goes straight to the media. And the first that the responders on the ground will know about it is when it's published on Sky News and seen there for the first time. Wouldn't it be wonderful if the 999 system, for example, could accept that information in? Now, does that mean that we need to, as the emergency services, which compared to the media are relatively low funded, if we look at how we can actually get that information in, should we be saying how we receive it, or should we be letting the industry tell us how they can deliver it? So perhaps we need to start looking at how we can start integrating information from the public into our command systems.
David, thank you. One more. Okay, last one then.
Just a quick comment in terms of the communication network and the response to the public information. I just give you a quick scenario which is currently happened in New York on the Times Square. The two main elements, they're both external factors. The response came from shopkeepers rather than the public or the police NYDP or the community police officer on the, if you like, the Bobby on the street. And the at the JF Kennedy as well, that was an airline, I think the Emirates response to the nature of the booking, which came, I think, 2 days or 1 day afterwards. The point mentioned in this, sometimes you have to build up a robust communication network, and you include the airline, which is maybe an external, although it's built in the system, but the both factor led the system to identify the item at the Times Square, plus the defendant at the JYF Kennedy. So you see, this is quite important.
Yes.
Whether you use email alert or Blueberry or all the rest of that. Thanks.
Certainly. Yes, there is so much information available now that actually that highlights the need for the human intervention to filter what information comes in, and also the detail now that's actually attached to a photograph. You start looking at actually where it was taken, when it was taken. Sometimes the GPS location's included there. So being able to actually interrogate that information in a useful way and pass it on to the incident commander in a format where they can take the detail, the pertinent detail out of it very quickly, is hugely important.
So one thing that you recently see is that things like Twitter, for example, tend to report information much faster than anything else. And it's a very resilient medium, because there are a lot of people, and you get information actually quite reliably.
Yes. Well, I was fortunate enough to go to Chicago to speak to the Department of Homeland Security, and one of the speakers there highlighted that when the election results came in, 10,000 people descended on the White House as a protest to take George W. Bush and throw him out of the White House as a demonstration, sort of thing. And it just took them totally by surprise. They didn't know it was going to happen. And the police officer in charge actually went home and said to his daughter, "You wouldn't believe what happened tonight. He got home 5 in the morning. It was ridiculous. All these people, out of nowhere, 10,000 people." She said, "I knew about that for a week. It's been on Twitter." and he was absolutely amazed. Well, at the inauguration, they actually used Twitter and they used Facebook to direct people towards areas of the grounds where they could make easy access, or where they could direct them away from points that were becoming congested. And they actually used the tool to assist people. And they had something like 10,000 people sign up to their Twitter as a friend. And yeah, it's a good way of seeing how people are utilising these new technologies and how valuable they are.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Very
Thank
much.
you.